Have you ever paused to wonder why humanity, though praying to one creator, stands divided under so many names: Jesus, Krishna, Allah, Buddha? Yogananda often said that God did not create religions, man did. The divine expressed itself in different lands, through different prophets, according to the language and culture of each time. Yet, the essence was always the same: love, purity, and oneness. When Paramahansa Yogananda spoke to Christians, his message was not a call to conversion, but to awakening. He said, "You need not renounce your faith, but you must go deeper into it." To him, Jesus was not a distant deity to be worshipped from fear, but a realized soul to be emulated through love. Yogananda reminded seekers that Jesus' message was not confined to a church or a nation, it was universal. The Christ spirit that lived in Jesus can live in each one of us when we learn to still the mind, purify the heart, and commune with God in silence. He often asked, "Why quarrel over religion when all rivers flow to the same sea?" His letter to Christians was, in truth, a letter to all humanity, an invitation to rise above dogma and rediscover direct experience of the divine. He spoke as one who had touched that presence, not as a preacher but as a realized yogi who had seen and felt the same light that shone through Jesus. As we begin this journey through his words and wisdom, let us open our hearts beyond belief, beyond form, and remember, the soul knows no religion, only the fragrance of love and truth. To Yogananda, the word Christ symbolized not merely the man Jesus, but the state of divine realization he embodied. He said gently, "Christ is not the surname of Jesus, it is the title of his divine attainment." The Christ consciousness was the all-pervading awareness of God's love, an ocean of bliss and compassion that manifests whenever a soul becomes completely united with the infinite. Jesus attained this state and became an eternal expression of that light. But Yogananda reminded his followers, "You too can awaken that same Christ within you." In his writings, particularly the Second Coming of Christ, Yogananda explained that Jesus' mission was to show humanity the pathway to inner realization. He said, "Jesus did not come to save us by belief, but by example, to show us what man could become when fully attuned to God." Yogananda saw Christ as the same divine consciousness that shone through Krishna, Buddha, and Babaji. They were not different beings, but radiant expressions of one eternal truth. He lovingly told Christians, "Do not worship Jesus merely as a distant figure on a cross. Feel his presence as the ever-living Christ within your own heart." When we meditate, pray, and live with love, that same vibration begins to awaken in us. In this, there is no contradiction between East and West, between yoga and Christianity, for God knows no boundaries. The true church is within, the altar is the heart, and the communion is the deep peace of God felt in stillness. When a Christian prays with true devotion, and a yogi meditates with pure love, both are touching the same Christ spirit. That is Yogananda's great revelation: Christ lives in all who love God sincerely. Yogananda often smiled and said, "Jesus was the greatest yogi the world has ever known." To him, the life of Christ was not a mere story of miracles, but the journey of a perfected soul who lived in ceaseless communion with God. In Autobiography of a Yogi, Yogananda revealed that he saw no separation between the teachings of Jesus and the science of yoga. Both paths lead the seeker toward the same inner realization, union with the divine self. When Jesus withdrew into the wilderness for 40 days, he was not merely fasting, he was entering deep meditation, transcending body consciousness to merge with spirit. When he spoke of the single eye, Yogananda explained, he referred to the spiritual eye, the divine light seen between the eyebrows when the mind is uplifted in meditation. And when he said, "Be still and know that I am God," it was the very essence of yoga, inner stillness leading to divine union. Yogananda reminded Christians that yoga is not a religion, but a method to experience the truths Jesus taught. Through the breath, the mind, and the heart, one can ascend into the same states of consciousness that Christ lived in. To love God with all one's heart, soul, and mind, Yogananda said, is the highest yoga. He urged all seekers not to argue over the outer forms of worship but to experience the inner communion of spirit. Whether one calls it meditation or prayer does not matter. The goal is the same, to feel God's living presence in the soul. Thus, Jesus and yoga are not two paths, they are two expressions of the same eternal road that leads from human limitation to divine realization. For Yogananda, the Bible was not a closed scripture, but a living guide filled with hidden mystical truths. He once said, "The Bible is not merely a book of history, it is the story of the soul's journey back to God." In the second coming of Christ, his two-volume masterpiece, Yogananda unveiled the deeper yogic meanings behind the words of Jesus. He explained that many teachings, long hidden beneath centuries of translation and interpretation, point to profound inner experiences known in meditation. When Jesus said, "The kingdom of heaven is within you," Yogananda affirmed that this kingdom is not a distant realm, but a state of consciousness accessible through stillness and inner awakening. Similarly, when Jesus told his disciples to pray in secret, Yogananda revealed that true prayer is not spoken aloud, but felt silently in the heart, as communion with the infinite. He also clarified that resurrection symbolized the soul's rise from identification with the mortal body into the immortal spirit. And the cross represents the intersection of human limitations and divine expansion, the point where man surrenders ego and becomes one with God. Yogananda urged Christians not to read scripture as mere philosophy, but as a manual for transformation. He said, "Read the Bible with intuition, not intellect. Each verse is a vibration, meant to lift the consciousness higher." Through deep meditation and love for God, one begins to live the Bible, not just quote it. In this way, Yogananda gave back to the modern world the original essence of Jesus' words, direct experience of God's presence within. Yogananda's letter to Christians was never limited to one faith, it was a love letter to humanity. He saw the divine thread connecting every religion and sought to remind the world of that unity. He wrote, "All true religions are rays of one light. When they meet at their source, all differences vanish." Yogananda believed that sectarianism, not spirituality, divides the world. True religion, he said, is not belief in a book or prophet, but direct realization of God. To Christians, he said, "Love Christ, but see in him the reflection of your own highest self." To Hindus, he said, "Revere Krishna, but feel him as the consciousness within all beings." And to every seeker, he gave this assurance, God has never been monopoly of any man or church. His love shines equally in every heart that calls sincerely. Yogananda's vision was not to merge religions into one, but to awaken mutual respect and understanding. He foresaw a future where a Christian could meditate like a yogi, a Hindu could love like Christ, and both would see that their prayers rise to the same infinite source. His dream was of a world where temples, churches, and mosques become schools of inner realization, not walls of division. In his life, Yogananda lived this message. He celebrated Christmas and Janmashtami with equal joy, seeing in both the same light of God. His message remains timeless, to love all, include all, and serve all. For in every soul, the same Christ consciousness shines, awaiting recognition. Yogananda taught that understanding truth is not enough, one must live it daily. He offered 3 universal practices to awaken the Christ within. First, daily communion, meditate morning and night, not as ritual, but as conversation with the infinite. Sit in stillness, focus on the spiritual eye, and feel divine love flow through the heart. In time, that presence becomes tangible, the same peace Jesus felt in his silent moments with God. Second, universal love, Yogananda said, if you cannot love your neighbor, you do not yet know God. True spirituality begins when we see every being as part of one divine family. Whether Christian, Hindu, Muslim, or Jew, all are souls clothed in different garments. When we live in kindness and forgiveness, we begin to express the Christ consciousness naturally. Third, selfless service, Yogananda emphasized that love must express itself through action. Help others, not out of duty, but out of joy. Each act of compassion purifies the heart and draws the soul closer to God. He reminded seekers, when you feel calm, loving, and blissful without reason, know that Christ is living within you. Religion, then, becomes experience, not a sermon, but a living vibration. The true church is the heart, the true prayer is silence, and the true heaven is the peace within. So as you listen to these words, close your eyes and feel the Christ light in your heart. Let it guide your thoughts, your speech, your life. This is Yogananda's eternal message. The second coming of Christ happens not outside, but within every awakened soul. Jai Gurudev.